Sarah Chen stared at her reflection in the bathroom mirror at 6:47 a.m., her phone buzzing with another work email. 8 hours in bed, yet her eyes looked hollow, her shoulders already tight with the day's first stress. The scale showed the same stubborn number it had for months, despite her latest attempt at intermittent fasting and HIIT workouts that left her more exhausted than energized. In the kitchen, she grabbed a protein bar and her third coffee of the morning, scrolling through fitness influencers, promising belly fat gone in 30 days. The familiar shame crept in. Why couldn't she just have more discipline? Her grandmother's old ceramic rice bowl sat unused in the cabinet, too small for her rushed breakfast portions, a relic from a different time when meals weren't eaten standing over the sink. The subway to her Manhattan marketing job was packed, but one passenger caught her attention. An older Japanese woman, maybe 70, sat with perfect posture, eyes closed, breathing slowly despite the chaos around her. Her face held a calmness that seemed impossible in this environment. Sarah touched her own racing pulse, wondering what secret this woman knew. At work, her colleague Kenji found her slumped over her desk at 10 a.m., already depleted. "Rough morning?" he asked gently. "Just tired." "Always tired," Sarah admitted. "I don't understand how you look so calm all the time." Kenji smiled, setting down his small teacup. "In Japan, we have saying, 'The nail that sticks out gets hammered down.' But maybe in America, you hammer yourselves too much." He pulled out a simple bento box, perfectly arranged with small portions. "My grandmother taught me, body is like garden. You cannot force flowers to bloom faster by shouting at them." Sarah watched him eat slowly, setting down his chopsticks between bites. Everything about his lunch seemed deliberate, peaceful. Her own sandwich disappeared in 5 minutes while answering emails. That evening, pulling her grandmother's rice bowl from the cabinet, Sarah held the smooth ceramic in her palms. It was tiny compared to her usual dinner plates, maybe holding a cup of rice at most. A memory surfaced. Her Taiwanese grandmother serving perfectly portioned meals, everyone eating together without phones, the quiet satisfaction of finishing everything without feeling stuffed. The bowl felt warm in her hands, a bridge between her frantic present and a slower, more intentional past. Word count, part 1, 421. If you've ever felt tired even after a full night of sleep or frustrated with diets that don't last, tell us in the comments which part of this story feels familiar, and stay with us for the next chapters. The next morning, Sarah filled her grandmother's rice bowl with oatmeal instead of her usual large serving. The portion looked absurdly small, but Kenji's words echoed, "You cannot force flowers to bloom faster." She ate slowly, setting her spoon down between bites, surprised when the small amount left her satisfied rather than deprived. Kenji noticed her lunch change immediately. "Ah, you found smaller plate," he observed approvingly. "In Okinawa they say, hara hachibu, eat until 80% full. Your stomach thanks you later." "How do you know when you're 80%? Sarah asked. "Easy. In America, you eat until you feel full. In Japan, we stop eating when we stop feeling hungry." Different feeling entirely. That week, Sarah began watching Kenji's habits more closely. He arrived at the same time but never seemed rushed. During lunch, he walked to the small Japanese market 3 blocks away, buying fresh ingredients daily rather than weekly grocery hauls. He drank warm tea throughout the day instead of cold beverages, explaining that cold shocked the digestive system. "But don't you get bored eating the same small amounts?" Sarah asked. "Bored?" Kenji seemed genuinely puzzled. "I taste my food. Most Americans, you eat while watching screens, answering emails. Your brain never gets message that meal happened." Sarah realized he was right. She couldn't remember the taste of yesterday's lunch. At home, she began eating from the rice bowl exclusively, placing it on the table instead of eating over the sink. The first few days felt frustrating. The portions seemed impossibly small. But by day 5, something shifted. Her afternoon energy crashes disappeared. She stopped reaching for snacks at 3 p.m. Most surprisingly, she began looking forward to meals instead of viewing them as fuel stops. Her friend Maya visited that weekend, eyeing the tiny bowl suspiciously. "Are you on some new diet?" Maya asked. "This looks like a kid's portion." "Not a diet, just paying attention," Sarah said, serving herself rice. The bowl forced her to slow down, to consider whether she truly needed seconds. "You know what you need? A good boot camp class. Sweat it out, burn those calories," Maya continued. "All this Zen stuff is just avoiding the real work." Sarah felt the familiar pull toward Maya's logic, more intensity, more suffering, more forcing. But as she held the warm ceramic bowl, something in her resisted. For the first time in years, eating didn't feel like a battle. It felt like coming home. Word count. Part 2. 4117. 3 weeks into using the rice bowl, Sarah's clothes began fitting differently. Not dramatically, but her jeans didn't cut into her waist after lunch. The constant bloating she'd accepted as normal had quietly disappeared. More importantly, her relationship with food was shifting from anxiety to curiosity. Kenji introduced her to the Japanese concept of forest bathing, walking slowly through Central Park during lunch breaks without phones or podcasts. "In Tokyo, we know city stress accumulates in body," he explained. "Trees release compounds that calm nervous system. Americans think exercise must hurt to work. My trainer says if it doesn't challenge you, it doesn't change you," Sarah countered, though the peaceful walks left her more energized than her grueling gym sessions. "Challenge and torture are different things," Kenji replied gently. At work, Sarah's productivity actually improved despite taking longer lunch breaks. Her afternoon crashes disappeared, replaced by steady energy that carried through evening. But not everyone appreciated the changes. "You've become so weird lately," Maya complained over dinner. "You barely ate anything. You keep putting your fork down, and you ordered tea instead of wine. Are you becoming one of those health nuts?" Sarah looked down at her half-finished meal, realizing she'd naturally stopped when satisfied. The portion was larger than her grandmother's bowl, but the habit of pausing, breathing, checking in with her body had become automatic. "I'm not restricting anything. I'm just listening," Sarah tried to explain. "Listening to what? Your food?" Maya laughed, but her tone carried an edge. "You used to be fun. Now you're all calm and zen. It's like you think you're better than the rest of us." The accusation stung because it touched Sarah's deepest fear, that healing somehow meant judging others. But later, walking home through the quiet streets, she considered Maya's reaction. Was her friend threatened by Sarah's changes or genuinely concerned? Dr. Martinez reviewed Sarah's latest blood work with raised eyebrows. "Your inflammation markers dropped significantly. What have you been doing differently?" "Eating from a smaller bowl," Sarah said, expecting skepticism. "Portion control can be powerful," he agreed. "But this level of improvement suggests something deeper. Your cortisol levels are much lower. Are you sleeping better?" She was. The evening ritual of washing and putting away the rice bowl had become a signal to her nervous system that the day's eating was complete. Without late-night snacking, her sleep deepened. Without sleep deprivation, her stress hormones balanced. The small ceramic bowl had become the center of an expanding circle of calm. Word count, Part 3, 432. Would you rather force yourself with willpower or redesign your environment and habits like this character is learning to do? Comment, which path makes more sense to you? And share this episode with someone who needs a gentler approach to change. The real test came when Sarah's company launched its biggest campaign of the year. 16-hour days, catered junk food, pressure to power through with caffeine and determination. Her colleagues devoured pizza and energy drinks while hunched over laptops, competing to see who could survive on the least sleep. Sarah found herself standing in the break room, holding a paper plate piled high with conference room leftovers. Her grandmother's rice bowl forgotten at home. The familiar voice in her head whispered, "See, this Zen stuff is just luxury for people without real pressure." But something had changed in her body's intelligence. The greasy food felt heavy, foreign. Her nervous system, now accustomed to gentle rhythms, recoiled from the chaos. She scraped half the food into the trash and ate slowly, standing by the window instead of at her desk. Kenji found her there, sipping tea from a paper cup. "Rough week?" he asked. "I feel like I'm betraying my team by not joining the suffering Olympics," Sarah admitted. "Everyone's staying late, eating garbage, bragging about no sleep, and I keep wanting to go home at reasonable hour and eat real food." In Japan, we have concept called karoshi, death from overwork. Very shameful for company when employee collapses from exhaustion. Here, you celebrate it. That evening, Sarah brought her rice bowl back to the office. It looked absurd next to her colleagues' massive takeout containers, but she served herself a reasonable portion of Thai food, eating slowly while others wolfed down dinner between Zoom calls. "Look at Sarah with her tiny bowl," someone joked. "Living her best life while we're over here grinding." The comment could have been friendly or cutting. Sarah couldn't tell. But she noticed something. The people teasing her were the same ones who complained constantly about being tired, bloated, unable to focus. Their grinding looked more like surviving than thriving. Maya visited during the chaos, bringing cookies and complaints about her own weight gain. "I don't understand how you stay so calm when everything's falling apart," Maya said, watching Sarah serve herself a small portion of dinner. "Don't you care about your career?" "I care about having a career I can sustain for 30 more years," Sarah replied, realizing the truth as she spoke it. "This isn't discipline, it's self-preservation." The campaign ended successfully, and while her colleagues needed days to recover, Sarah felt steady, present, energized. The rice bowl hadn't just changed her eating. It had become a daily practice of setting boundaries, honoring limits, choosing sustainability over intensity. Word count. Part 4. 426. 6 months after rediscovering her grandmother's rice bowl, Sarah sat in Dr. Martinez's office reviewing test results that seemed to belong to a different person. Weight down 20 pounds, blood pressure normal, inflammation markers in healthy ranges. But the numbers told only part of the story. "What exactly did you do?" Dr. Martinez asked, genuinely curious. "These aren't typical results from calorie restriction or extreme exercise." Sarah held the rice bowl in her lap, having brought it to the appointment almost unconsciously. "I stopped trying to override my body's signals and started listening to them." The real revelation had come gradually, almost invisibly. The bowl had been a tool, but the transformation went deeper. She'd shifted from seeing her body as an adversary to be conquered, to understanding it as an ally with its own wisdom. "In my family, my grandmother knew when to eat, how much, when to rest," Sarah explained. "But somewhere I learned that intuition was weakness, that I needed rules and programs and experts to tell me what my body already knew." She thought about Kenji's patient explanations, the Japanese concepts that seemed foreign at first, but felt increasingly natural. Harahachi wasn't just about portion control, it was about trusting your body's signals. Forest bathing wasn't just walking, it was remembering that humans weren't designed for constant stimulation. The bowl forced me to slow down enough to notice, am I actually hungry or just anxious? Am I eating this because it nourishes me or because it's there? Do I need more food or do I need rest, connection, quiet? Dr. Martinez nodded thoughtfully. "We've medicalized hunger and satiety, turned them into complex calculations instead of trusting millions of years of evolutionary wisdom." That evening, Sarah prepared dinner with new awareness. The rice bowl sat on her kitchen counter, no longer just a vessel, but a daily reminder of a profound shift in identity. She wasn't someone who needed to be controlled, managed, fixed. She was someone who could trust her own body's intelligence when she created space to listen. Genji had been right. You cannot force flowers to bloom faster by shouting at them, but in the right environment, with patience and attention, they bloom naturally, beautifully, in their own time. The bowl had taught her the most radical lesson of all, that healing wasn't about having more willpower, but about needing less of it. When your environment supports your well-being, when your rhythms align with your biology, when you trust instead of force, the right choices become easier than the wrong ones. Word count, Part 5, 430. 2 years later, Sarah's kitchen had quietly transformed. The rice bowl sat in its place of honor, joined by other small dishes, chopsticks, a proper tea set. Friends initially found her dinner parties strange. Smaller portions, slower conversation, phones in a basket by the door. But they lingered longer, talked deeper, left feeling nourished rather than stuffed. Maya had slowly come around, curious about Sarah's sustained energy and calm demeanor. "I thought you were being dramatic with all that Zen stuff," Maya admitted. "But you look different, younger somehow." "I stopped fighting myself," Sarah said simply, serving tea. "Turns out that takes a lot of energy." Dr. Martinez now used Sarah's case in presentations about lifestyle medicine, her blood work a testament to the power of gentle, sustained changes. But the real transformation was invisible to medical tests. The peace she'd found with her own body, the trust she'd rebuilt with her own instincts. Genji had returned to Tokyo, but his influence remained in the small rituals that anchored Sarah's days. Morning tea instead of frantic coffee, walking meetings when possible, meals eaten with attention and gratitude. The Japanese concepts he'd shared, hara-hachi-bu, forest bathing, the patient cultivation of well-being, had become as natural as breathing. At work, younger colleagues sought her advice about managing stress and staying healthy in demanding careers. Sarah found herself sharing her grandmother's bowl wisdom, watching others discover what she'd learned, that discipline wasn't about forcing yourself to do hard things, but about creating environments where healthy choices became natural choices. The rice bowl, now slightly chipped from years of use, continued its quiet service. Each meal it held was a small ceremony of self-respect, a daily practice of listening rather than overriding, trusting rather than forcing. Sarah's transformation hadn't been dramatic or photogenic, the kind that made for inspiring before and after posts. It had been gradual, internal, sustainable, the kind of change that didn't announce itself but simply became who you were. Sometimes, washing the bowl in her quiet kitchen, she thought about her grandmother, who had never needed to rediscover what Sarah had spent decades forgetting. But perhaps each generation had to find their own way back to wisdom, their own path to peace with the body they'd been given. The bowl would continue its service, holding not just food, but intention, not just meals, but moments of mindfulness. In a world that celebrated force, it represented something revolutionary, the radical act of gentleness toward oneself. Word count, Part 6, 414. If this story reminded you that real transformation comes from small habits repeated over time, not from overnight fixes, subscribe to the channel, tell us which country you watch from, and invite someone to start this journey with you in the next story. Total word count 2,540.